50 years ago, there were not opportunities typically for people to be able to show themselves to be experts at scale.
Dorie, welcome to Ultrahabits. We are connecting from around the world. Super excited to have you on the show.
Hey, RJ, I'm really glad to be here with you.
Yeah, it's kind of weird talking to you one-on-one because generally I'm like watching you on a webinar or, like it's kind of like I'm in a group forum. It's like you're a hologram and now you're like this real person because we're having this conversation.
That's right. I love it.
Yeah. And look, I'm a fan and, I originally came across your work through the Harvard Business Review. And what really intrigued me was this concept of a recognized expert, right? So like we're all in a world that has a lot of noise. There are a lot of experts. There's a lot of people yelling things. And, your articles really started to help me understand a pathway out of the madness, so to speak, into some level of cohesion. But for our audience that don't know, like, what is a recognized expert? What would you classify that as?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, as you and I know, there are lots of people in the world who have expertise. They're smart. They're good at what they do. That's fantastic. And if you are lucky enough to know them directly, or maybe you get a referral, you can find somebody who's really good at their thing. I mean, almost all of us, I know as a consumer, if I can find someone who's really talented, really amazing, I mean, of course I want to work with that person. But there's a little bit of a sourcing problem or a matching problem because, number one, as a consumer, I often don't know how to find them. I mean, in fact, I'm looking for a painter right now in Miami. Like if I could legitimately find the best painter, I would pay for the best painter. And mostly I'm just finding a lot of kind of randos, right? So that's one side of the problem. The other side of the problem is that you may be that expert, but, in a lot of cases, nobody has ever told you how to market yourself, how to do business development. You are good at the thing you're good at, but actually being able to reach people, being able to build the kind of business you want, being able to have the kind of impact you want, that is hard because that is a completely different problem than figuring out in the first place how to get good at your niche, whether that is being a lawyer or being a dog breeder or being a consultant or a coach. And so ultimately, the part that's missing is the recognized part. How do you take someone who legitimately is talented and has something to offer? We're not talking about some fake Potemkin village thing. We're talking about somebody who actually really does have something to offer. How can we get them so that they understand what steps to take so that they can become better known and build the kind of business they want to build, reach more people, and be able to help more people? That's the problem I'm interested in solving.
Very well said. Dorie, do you feel that the way we perceived experts has changed from, let's say, 50 years ago? Like, has the process, do you think, in terms of how people are perceived as experts, is that the same or different, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's certainly some commonalities and common strands from 50 years ago. But what I do think is powerful and helpful, I mean, it's both a good thing and the nature of the problem, is that 50 years ago, there were not opportunities typically for people to be able to show themselves to be experts at scale. You were an expert 50 years ago if you were a professor at a famous university. Maybe you had published a book with a New York publisher. Maybe you were quoted or featured in a magazine, something like that. Those things still count today. Those things are still respected signs. But what we do have the ability to do today is have more control and break through the gatekeepers. So if you are someone who has an unpopular message, if you are someone who has a non-traditional background, you might have been blackballed 50 years ago because, oh, sorry, you don't have a PhD or whatever it is. Now you can self-publish. Now you could start your own blog. You could start your own podcast. And is it easy to break through and be heard by lots of people? No, it's not easy, but you have the option. Whereas before, there was literally just not a vehicle to be able to reach people. The internet has changed that and has opened it up. And so it's a slog, and it means for consumers that there's a lot of noise to get through. You know, it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff, but there's more opportunity for people that are willing to work for it.
Yeah. Like if we look at someone like Tony Robbins, right? Like back in the day, he would have had to put in a lot of work to scale his message, right? Because there was no internet. Like everything would have had to been physical travel. Like in many ways, people in that era that were able to build a recognized expert status, like it wasn't, in many ways, it'd be much harder, right? Because it wasn't as scalable. But I guess what you're also saying is that there's probably more noise out there today too, right? So like,
there's a lot more noise out there. Tony Robbins, for sure, he put in a lot of time and effort traveling and doing workshops and things like that. One of the early drivers for his success, though, was television. It may even have been paid placement. I'm not 100% sure, but he had these like half-hour programs that would air on television. So he was able to reach people at scale. But I mean, that's a really costly intervention. I mean, you know, being on television, having crews, having people record you, creating, you know, these kind of elaborate things to be seen by millions of people, that, you know, I mean, that gives you tons of exposure and credibility, but my God, is it expensive. And so it means you either have to have some kind of really rich backer, or you need to have some kind of clever strategy for it. You need to already have some kind of momentum. Whereas today, somebody could start with basically no money. I mean, it doesn't take any money to start a blog, or it takes very, very little money to start a podcast.
How did you uncover this problem, Dorie? Like, walk us into how you, because I know the story, but I mean, for the audience, like, you were never a guru, right? Like, you're kind of a practitioner, but I think it's great to kind of unfold the story of how did you actually find this problem, you know, out there that existed.
Yeah, thanks, RJ. Well, I mean, I found it because I just like walked straight into it. That's how I found it. Yeah. I think anybody who is self-employed and has tried to get a business going realizes pretty fast, and, you know, to great horror, oh no, there's a lot of people doing what I'm doing. You know, it's kind of alarming. And somehow, really fast, if you want your business to be successful, you need to find a way to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And so I became kind of obsessed with that question because I really, you know, wanted my business to succeed. And so I became a student of the steps that it would take for me to market and position myself effectively. And I began really leaning into that, applying those strategies. And it was helpful because I was able to take what I was learning and use it in my consulting work for other organizations. Eventually, a number of years later, people started coming to me and saying, hey, you know, what is it you're doing? What is it that you did here? And I started writing and advising them as well.
So effectively, it became a bit of a formula, right? In terms of the pathway. And I mean, how much of it is formulaic versus kind of luck and just quantity and activity? Like, or, you know, is it if you follow X, Y, Z and you just stick at it over time, focusing on the long game, you'll get there? Or is it have a lot to do with just kind of timing and luck and quantity? What's your view on that?
Well, I think that it's both, in the sense that there's almost two different levels of the conversation. I think the formula is that there are certain types of things that you need to do. There are certain categories that you need to check in order to be an effective recognized expert. And so this is kind of what I call my recognized expert formula. It's 3 pieces. It's content creation, social proof, and network. And you really do need all of these things. They can manifest in lots of different ways. But number 1, very hard to be a recognized expert if you don't have a good network. You know, if no one knows who you are, if you don't have connections, if you don't have people amplifying you, it just becomes, you know, very tricky for people to find out about you. That probably makes intuitive sense. Number 2, pretty hard to become a recognized expert if you do not have social proof, meaning affiliations that demonstrate your credibility. Again, it doesn't have to be one particular type of thing, but you need to have something. Like, if you're a recognized expert and you've never written a book, you are not affiliated with a university, you don't have, a show that you do or followers, if you, don't have an idea or intellectual property that you are associated with, it's like, if you don't have celebrities or people who are well known in your field, saying, oh yeah, RJ's a good guy, then it's sort of like, well, are you really a recognized expert? Because all the signs are sort of missing, right? So you need to have that. And then the third is content creation. And again, it doesn't really matter if you're a speaker versus if you're a writer versus if you're a podcaster or videos or whatever. There's different ways to share your ideas. But if you want to be recognized for ideas, you have to share them somehow. So I feel like at a very foundational level, these are common categories. This is a common formula to almost anybody in almost any field who strives to be recognized for their expertise. Now, that being said, there's a lot of different manifestations of it. And so they can do it in different ways. And, above and beyond it, does timing help? Of course it does. I mean, there are people who have books or ideas that are really right for the moment, and then they just go. Like, would Ibram Kendi and Robin DiAngelo in the United States have been such a big deal if George Floyd had not been killed? No. I mean, these are books that had come out. Some people knew them, people who were into diversity and inclusion were like, yeah, that's cool. But racism became a very big conversation in 2020 because of the George Floyd situation. And so as a result, these books suddenly became massive bestsellers that would not have happened under normal circumstances. They were, it's such a bad situation. You don't want to call it luck. But in terms of their book sales, yes, that was luck.
Yeah, I sometimes, it's interesting because I sometimes see, particularly now that I'm on this path, like I can sometimes see the opportunistic nature of people positioning their content on the backdrop of kind of geopolitical issues. And sometimes it feels a bit weird, right? Because sometimes like, but I mean, you also, I guess, have to be strategic too, right? And kind of know which way the wind is blowing and align your sales to that, particularly if it's something you value and it's purposeful. In terms of the thousands of people that you've worked with, because I know there's literally thousands in our group, there's a few thousand, I think. Are there qualities or are there certain things that inhibit people from actually progressing on this path? Like if you were to say, look, like, what gets in people's way, what would you say are some of the bigger kind of issues or things that just kind of inhibit people from moving down this path?
Oh, man. I mean, in a lot of cases, I mean, honestly, in almost all cases, RJ, I feel like what inhibits people is things in their own mind, largely from their childhood. Wow. And yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was a guy that I did coaching with a number of years ago, and really good guy, really nice guy, smart, good ideas, and we literally never finished our coaching engagement. Like our coaching engagement had 12 sessions. I mean, he paid for all of it. I think he did like 10. And then he just started ghosting me. Like I was the coach. Like, why are you ghosting me? You paid me to help. But he started ghosting me because, when I would give him homework assignments, and again, this is not me being like, oh, write your name 400 times. This is like, me suggesting, okay, you want to do X? Great. Why don't you try this? You can send it to me. I'll look at it. But and he wouldn't do it. He kept like not doing it. And there's always an excuse. It was kind of like a schoolboy almost. Like he's like, oh, well, there was like, oh, my air conditioner broke. And, I mean, okay. I mean, he's paying me. It's not like I'm like a teacher. It's fine. So I'd just be like, all right, well, let's do it next time. But every time there was something. And I really have to believe that's not, at a certain point, it's not because you're busy. Everybody's busy. It's because there was something he was afraid of. And he literally just stopped contacting me, this person he had already paid, because he just so didn't want to face it. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it was feeling like, oh gosh, I'm going to come up with something and then, Dorie's going to say it's not good enough or whatever. I mean, like TLDR, by the way, none of our ideas are good enough at first. That's why we review them. That's why we revise them. But, I think for whatever reason, that probably would have been, it just felt like too much for him. I have to just be guessing that. I don't know. But I mean, that for me is kind of an archetypal but extreme example of someone who they want a thing, but it's almost too difficult or painful for them to reach for that thing.
I think you would know this because you're introspective, but like I reflect on what you help people do. You're effectively trying to help people that have kind of reached the top of their craft transition and walk through that fear. And there's a lot in that, right? Like it's a very aspirational thing you're trying to do, because a lot of the people in the Rex program are at the top of their field, legitimately can and have the right to walk into that, that next realm, but they're knocking on the door of their insecurities and fears, right? And how does that long game mentality play into it, man? Because I think you have to be mentally tough to do what we're all trying to do, what we're doing in your program. Like, how does that relate, like the long game?
Yeah, I think you're really right, RJ, because this makes sense intellectually, but it's very hard for most of us to face that. Of course, if you have a long-term goal that is meaningful, number one, it probably is going to take a while to reach. Number two, it's probably not going to be super easy to reach. Like, lots of people would love to reach it, but not everybody does. So, it implies that there are going to be challenges and that this may be a bit of an arduous path. That it's, on one hand, if you actually talk to someone and you're like, so do you think that like literally everything you do will go perfectly and that it'll be completely smooth sailing? They'll be like, no, of course not. I know that. But then in practice, like one editor tells them no for one piece and they're like, I'm just not cut out for this. I just don't think this is the right move. Maybe it's not meant for me. And it's like, no, excuse me. You just told me that you knew there were obstacles, right? This is an obstacle right here. So this is why the community element of Recognized Expert is so important, because you need other people to be able to say, no, man, I got that rejected like 5 times. Like, no, keep submitting it other places. Yes, it's good enough. Yes, keep going. It's really important to see that and to have the community of support so that you don't view yourself somehow as, like the universe is telling you this negative message.
That is, that's when I knew you were my tribe. Like when you wrote that book and I started reading about the long game, because the world, we're marketed to that we can hack everything. Do these 3 things and you'll go viral, right? Like, it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and nobody's actually telling people this shit is going to be hard, and it's going to take a long time. People that are on that path, like, how do they know that they're moving towards being a recognized expert? Like, are there like signs that they're actually kind of progressing? Like, what's the feedback there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the concepts that I talk about in the long game is what I call looking for the raindrops, because I really do think of it as like almost like a thunderstorm metaphor, because, if what we're looking for, if sort of our definition of success is like the sky's open and like, everything's pouring down, like, oh, it's raining money, it's raining success, it's raining invitations from Tim Ferriss, like, okay, clearly when a storm is coming through, you don't go from like perfectly calm weather to, like massive downpour and thunder overnight. That is, well, in weather you might, but like instant.
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
But like what happens is clouds roll in, right? What happens is the sky suddenly gets darker. What happens is the air pressure changes. What happens is there's a few little drips and it starts to rain just a little tiny bit. You are seeing atmospheric changes. And if the only thing you're looking for, if your only definition of success is being in the thick of the downpour, that really takes a while, and you are going to miss all of the signs leading up to it. And the truth is, if the thunderstorm doesn't happen for a while, you might quit, you might give up, you might just say, oh, screw this, I'm going to go inside. You're going to miss it all. What you need to do is train yourself to look for what the equivalents for you are of the raindrops. So, I mean, if for instance, you're trying to build a podcast that's successful, success might look like, oh, I'm picked up by this cool network and now somebody's offering me 6 figures to do it or whatever. Great. That'll take a while. In the meantime, are you starting to get more reviews? And are you actually getting reviews that are unsolicited and not just because you badgered your friends? That's a sign that you're getting, some progress and some traction. Are you starting to get people coming to you and saying, RJ, can I be on your podcast? Rather than you having to knock, 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 oh, please, will you be on my podcast? Are you starting to get people in your life introducing you as, oh, RJ, he's a podcaster? Like, do they know it? Do they remember it? Is it a memorable enough thing? Those are all the kinds of things that are small and subtle and might be overlooked, but it begins to show you like, oh, this is a thing. This is actually catching on. This is getting some traction.
Where did you develop this mental toughness yourself, Dorie? Like, where did you get the grit from? Like, is this just how you're designed, or was this something you developed?
I wish in some ways that I had a better sort of framework and formula of like, oh, I overcame this and here's exactly how I do it. The truth is, I've kind of always been like this personally, but so I don't have a great story about, oh, here's the steps, here's the process. But what I like to think that I offer is, I think that I can offer to other people who struggle with this a little bit more, a sense of what it's like not to. Because if you can see that it's possible, then you actually can realize like, oh, wait, I mean, I run a mastermind, RJ. That's one of the things that I do. It's this year-long mastermind program. And we had people a few weeks ago here in my house in Miami. And one of the things that we were having a conversation about was this question, like, how do you sort of get out of your own head? How do you, feel okay, like stepping up and embracing all this? And one of the things that I said to them, which afterwards, we were going around at the end of the mastermind and I asked, like, what was most impactful for you? And like multiple people said, like, this was the thing that they were like, oh yeah, that's going to be kind of rattling around for me. But what I said, and I really believe this, is like, look, a problem that we have is that so often we tend to compare ourselves to the people who are the best in our field. Oh, I'm not as good of a writer as Daniel Pink is. Oh, I'm not as good of a podcaster as, whatever. Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. You're holding yourself up. And, sure, right? I mean, they've probably been doing it longer, but, whatever, first of all, there's 7 billion people. You don't literally have to be the same as or even as good as in order to be successful. But what I think is the more salient thing that all of us should be aware of is there are a lot of people out there who are successful. They may even, by certain metrics, be more successful than we are. They might have more clients. They might be making more money. They might have more listeners or viewers or whatever it is. And you know what? They are not as good. And this is very interesting because if there is someone who you really feel confident, like I could do that. I could do that better than him. Why is he ... Well, that's actually really useful data because what I take from that, it's not to begrudge the other person. God bless. Okay, I'm glad you managed. But if I'm better than that and I'm not having that level of success, the question to ask is, why not me? Of course I can do it. I don't have to be the best in the world to qualify for success. If that guy can do it, I can clearly do it. And so I think for me, it's just a focusing mechanism because it shows you, of course it's possible. If it's possible for them, it's possible for you. And so we need to just operate as though that were the case because that's what enables it to have the confidence to take the actions that, yes, of course it can work out, because it's worked out for people who are less qualified.
Mm. And by kind of examining what they've done that we haven't done, that actually gives us insights and gives us possible solutions, right, to close the gap.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I think a lot of it is just kind of a weird perfectionism that people think literally they have to be the best in the world. I mean, I know I'm good at what I do. Am I the best in the world? I don't know. I don't even know how you'd measure that. But the important thing is for everyone to recognize you are good enough. You are more than good enough. So stop just, dicking around and asking yourself these endless ruminative questions. It's not helpful. Just get going.
That's my favorite version of Dorie. So there's a few versions of Dorie I noticed. There's the professional polished Dorie, and then there's the Dorie that gets animated and lets it fly. That's my favorite version of Dorie Clark, for sure. One of the things that is really unusual, and I sent you an email about this, about your program, is how diverse the people are. Like, in many ways, you've got people that I know have major differences of belief systems, from like super conservative people to like people that are way out there. And so I suppose it goes to show the strength of what you're trying to do, right? Because it's of interest to people irrespective of, race, gender, creed, color, whatever. And so in terms of, someone on the path of becoming a recognized expert, have you been able to witness through your program people going from literally unknown to like, wow, like, it is storming and it's raining and it's everything that you were just talking about? Like, have you been able to witness that?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different metrics that we can look at and point to. But yeah, in lots of different ways, people have been able to take the principles of recognized expert and run with them in very powerful ways. I mean, I actually did in November, so this is a few months later now as we're recording this, but in November, I actually gave a project to my assistant because I was really curious how many people in the recognized expert community had become Harvard Business Review contributors. Now, this is, of course, not the be-all and end-all. There are other great publications. Not everybody, is in the business realm to begin with, so not, it wouldn't be relevant. But it is one measure out of many in terms of a thing that people point to as like, yeah, I want to do that. That for me is a sign of success. And so we have, in the recognized expert community, 55 people who have become Harvard Business Review contributors. This is in a community of about 700 people. So it's actually pretty remarkable that, there's not that many people. I mean, Harvard Business Review publishes like 4 to 5 articles per day. That's it. This is not like some publications that have thousands and thousands of contributors. So it's a fairly rarefied universe. And the fact that many people have really learned the mechanics, that they've committed themselves to taking their expertise and funneling it and sharing it in that format in a very prestigious publication, I think is very meaningful to me. And I think for all of them, they feel like, yeah, that's like kind of a bucket list goal that's really powerful. So we have that. I mean, we have people, like Diva Purushothaman, who's a member of the community. Her TED Talk has over 1 million views, which is really amazing. We have people, who are published in all kinds of different publications. Just today, I was looking in the group, and Richard Bistrong, who's a great member, got his 3rd piece published in Fast Company, I think yesterday. So there's a lot of, Laura Gassner-Otting has been on both the Today Show and multiple times on Good Morning America. So we have a lot of people who are really doing very cool things in different ways.
Yeah. And I would say one of the most powerful things about your program is the community. Ultimately, I think that there's so much power and strength in that, particularly when you're trying to do something that is hard. There are naysayers. a lot of your people, which is going to lead me to another question, are also trying to transition, right? So they're like still working and they're like trying to shift away from that work into this new space. Do you find that's complicated for people? Like, is that difficult for people to manage, that kind of juxtaposition of trying to like move forward, but then they're kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like what do you find it's tough?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, transitions are always tough in some regard, but I actually really respect it because when, I think that a lot of the discourse around starting your own business or making a change somehow in your career, I feel like a lot of the discourse is not helpful because oftentimes it's this very all or nothing language we have around it. It's like, take the leap, take the plunge, like, all these very dramatic metaphors that involve like falling, drowning, like, oh, okay, like who wants to do that? And the truth is, of course, this is just a thing. This is just a fact that when you start a new venture, it takes you some time to get it going. It takes you some time to get some clients. It takes you some time, honestly, to even figure out like what is your product market fit. And so I actually think it's much better for people to start whatever their aspirational goal is as a side project, as a side gig for a while, so they can play with it, nurture it, get it to product market fit so that they understand, oh, okay, here's what I'm offering. People seem to want it. Here's who I'm going to sell it to. And, oh, they seem to be buying it. If you can figure that out before you quit your job and, stop getting regular income, that's great. That's a huge advantage. I think in my mind about somebody named Cher Downing, who's an early member of the Recognized Expert community, and she joined specifically 2 years prior to when she was planning to retire. She was a vice provost at a university and, which is a great, prestigious position. She'd been in academia for 20 plus years, but she wanted to go out on her own as an educational tech consultant. And so she joined Recognized Expert 2 years before she wanted to make that change because she's like, you know what? I want to be smart about this. I want to take these 2 years while I'm still earning a good income and just, like she didn't have a huge amount of time to devote, but she knew she had some. And she's like, if I can make smarter and better informed choices now about what I should be focusing on and what I shouldn't, by the time I do retire, it's going to be in a much better position and kind of ready to achieve liftoff. And that's exactly what happened. She was able to really do a good job getting her business going because she had immersed herself in this community and she had learned all these great things about how to launch a business.
What are some of the things that some of the Rexers do just for our audience? So, you've got an individual that has a job and they're thinking about an idea and they want to test the market. Like, what are some of the things people do to see if there is actually interest out there?
Yeah. Well, so the very first thing, which I think is useful, is to see, okay, are people interested in your thing if your thing is free? If they are not interested in your thing when your thing is free, I would say that is generally a bad sign. So test it now. So like, let's pretend that, you are a fashion consultant. Okay. So
like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're a fashionable guy. So
not really, but let's play with that one.
Really. So, what you could do is put out the word to your friend. You're like, hey, I'm interested in, potentially, you guys always come to me for advice. I'm thinking of starting a side business doing this. I, want to do closet cleanses for people or something. I'll help them figure out their outfits, whatever. I'm just testing things out. I'm looking for 3 people. I'm happy to do it for them for free if they are willing, assuming they like it, to provide a testimonial and maybe make some referrals to their friends. What do you think? So you put it out to your network of extended friends. Hopefully, let's see, you can get a few people to say yes. So you do that. And the first thing you want to see is like, do you enjoy it, right? It might sound better in practice than it does in reality. So are you having fun? Is it enjoyable? That's the first bar. The second bar is, okay, how did it go? What can you learn from it? But you sort of, you work out the kinks, you figure it out. Maybe you thought it would take you 3 hours, but it only took you 2 hours, or vice versa. Okay. So you begin to think a little bit more about what pricing would look like. But initially, you just need some credibility. So being able to, to have a few people, with quotes like, oh, RJ's the best. He really helped, great. Okay. And it gives you case studies that you can talk about. So then you go to them, you go back to your original friends, you say, okay, great. I'm doing this. I've figured out I'm going to do RJ's closet cleanse. I'm going to charge $500. Here's what the package is. And you start floating it and seeing if people will bite for it. And, maybe at first you're doing it once a month, but you want to validate, okay, do people want it? Are they willing to pay? And if they are, you slowly start building it. You can reinvest some of the money. Okay, you get a couple. Maybe you have enough money for a website. So then you get a, kind of quick and dirty website. Now you can start advertising a little more. Maybe more people are finding you. And that enables you to let it go and grow. And what it reminds me of is in my first book, Reinventing You, I actually profiled this woman named Patricia Fripp, who basically did this. She was a hairdresser who reinvented herself into being a professional speaker. And she did it over the course of 10 years because she had a 10-year lease on her salon. And her goal over this decade was to basically replace her hairdressing income with her speaking income. And at first, it took a long time, right? At first, she's making $100 here and $100 there. But eventually, by the time her lease was up, she was able to hand in the keys and never look back because she was more than making up her revenue from the salon with her speaking income, even though it took her a decade to do it. But she got it done, and there was no leaping. There was no plunging. She just sauntered into her new career.
That's remarkable. Do you find that most of the Rexers, they're wanting to do something associated with their craft, or are there people that, oh my God, I'm a tech consultant, but I want to sell dog grooming services? Like, do you get a bit of that too? Like the kind of a whole midlife crisis thing going on there? Like, or is it typically more step changed?
I would say it's a little bit of a self-selecting crowd in the sense that, the sort of the marketing and the ethos around recognized expert is we're sort of aimed at people who are already experts. They just want to get better known. Yeah. So often people who really do love what they do, they're sort of wedded to what they do, but they just want to reach more people with it. But certainly it's true. We do have people who may have expertise in two different things. Like, oh, I'm a psychologist, but I'm also a painter or something like that. And so they're a little torn because they've got both things.
Yeah. Well, look, Dorie, we're going to start to land this plane. I really value you, and I loved this conversation. One of the things we always do with our guests is kind of talk about habits, right? Like, so and I know that you would have a lot of this in your mind around what it takes for someone on the path. So say like I'm new, I've just heard this interview and I'm like, yeah, Dorie Clark, she's a shit. I joined your program and I decide to get on the recognized expert path. Like, what are some of the habits and some of the things that I could do just to sustain me to ensure that I don't bail? Like, that it's something that once I make that decision, I'm going to stay on the path.
That's right. How do you box yourself in and recognized expert? I like it. It. It's, as we know, right? Willpower can fail, but habits will sustain you.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely on board with that. I would say there's a few things, RJ. Number one is a really basic thing that doesn't take more than 5 seconds, but I think it's a good habit for people to start, is to start capturing ideas. Because one of the hardest things when it comes to, being a recognized expert is a lot of times, these folks, right? Anybody who is an expert in their field or who knows a decent amount about their field, there's plenty of things they have to say. There's plenty of ideas they have. But sometimes when you're literally just like staring at the blank page, like, oh God, I have to write a blog. What should I write about? I don't know what I should write about. It just sounds like oppressive. And so you're sitting there for like 6 hours, like, what do I write? And it's no way to do it. It's terrible. So I'm a big fan of having people capture their ideas when they have them, because you probably have really good ideas, but they also flit away. That is the nature of ideas. So you can do voice memos. I personally use the notepad function of my cell phone to just like write down. I do this all the time. I'm like, article dash, 5 reasons why people are afraid to ask for what they're worth or whatever. And then I just like, maybe I only know 2 of them, at the time. I'm like, oh, how about this and this? But even having 2 is so helpful, because when it comes time for me to write that article, I already have a start. And when you have something to work with, it just needs to go a lot simpler. So idea capture is number 1. And then the second one that I would say specifically about the recognized expert community is that one of the things that I really try to encourage, and I do this by encouraging people to participate in our monthly webinars that we have. Also, when we have a launch, periodically, like sort of once or twice a year, we'll do different things like, have like group coaching calls, or we'll assign buddies. Like we'll ask people like, hey, do you want an accountability buddy? And people can raise their hand and we'll pair them up with somebody. But one of the most important things that you can do is make friends with other people in the community. Because if you have a shared interest, I mean, it's like anything, right? It's like if all your friends are in the bicycling club, it's a lot easier for you to be motivated to go bicycling because, oh, good, I get to see my friends. Like you might not exactly feel like biking if it's raining or something, but it's like, well, I'll get to see my buddies. And so, okay. And so you want to develop friendships. And frankly, these are extremely interesting, talented people. So these are the kind of people you want to get to know, but you're all sort of on the same path about like, oh, how's your podcast, RJ? Oh, my podcast is good. Let's trade some ideas, or whatever it is. But it enables you to kind of stay on the straight and narrow because you have a community of other people who value that kind of work toward platform building as well.
Yeah, no, that's really extraordinary. I resonate with both of those massively, particularly the last one. I think like when you are trying to embark on any form of transformation, which this really is, the power of the community to kind of remind you you're not alone, to support you. And to the earlier point you made, when the universe is telling you, or you think the universe is telling you, man, you suck. You don't. One last question, Dorie. Where can the audience learn more about you? Where can they go to learn more about Dorie Clark?
Yeah, thank you so much, RJ. I appreciate it. Well, for folks who are interested in checking out the Recognized Expert course and community, you can go to DorieClark.com/Rex, REX. And if folks want to check out more information about my latest book, it's called The Long Game, How to Be a Long-Term Thinker in a Short-Term World. And you can check it out and get a free self-assessment, a strategic thinking self-assessment at DorieClark.com/TheLongGame.
Thank you so much, Dorie.
Thanks, RJ. Take care.